Welcome to Become the Leader, the show that equips you to rise higher, lead stronger, and become the leader you would follow. Hey guys, Jody Holland here. We've got a great show for you today. One of the things that a number of my clients have been talking about is, do we still have critical thinking skills in our world, or are we deteriorating those because AI can handle that? So we're going to talk about how you develop your next generation of subject matter experts. So without further ado, I'm Jody.
Malia.
Mike.
And I'm Megan.
We did that so well. I'm so proud of us.
We're getting gooder.
We didn't even have to have AI intervene to remind us of our names.
Right.
So
That's right.
I'm going to jump back as an older gentleman here. And Mike, since you're even older than me, you're welcome to chime in. I mean, by a year, but still. Not a lot older. I wanted you to think back. Like, I went into business in 1999. You and I were working together back in 2000, 2001. 1998, I believe, is when Google was founded. And fast forward a few years, you got to this phrase. It was like a verb. Oh, I'll just Google it. And you found pretty quickly, people were like, I don't need to remember stuff anymore because Google has organized it. So tell me your thoughts, Mike, as we get started. Like, what did you see during that time that made you think, are we going to be smart enough in the future?
Well, first of all, I'm kicking myself because when Google came out, I was like, that's a stupid name. I'm not going to invest in that. It's just a flash in the pan. So yeah. Okay. I just dropped myself many IQ points from that.
Arguably, they're doing okay financially.
I think they'll be around for a minute. I think it's interesting too, because there was a website, and I got to spell it out. So it was LMGTFY.com, and it stood for Let Me Google That For You. And it was an animated version. Like, if you typed in your search, or if you went in there and you typed in what you were looking for, it would animate this arrow going up, clicking on a brand new browser and typing your search into Google, and then it would pull up the Google search. I thought it was phenomenal. But it was, people were really getting kind of lazy around this idea and of critical thinking, and hey, let me Google this. Google has everything. Google, right? I think before we jump too far into it, I think it'd be really good to just kind of define what critical thinking is, because I don't think that we're losing it. I just don't think that it's clear. I think it's got some tarnish on it, and we just need to do a little bit of spit polish. I think for me, I think the easiest way to sum up critical thinking is, again, the old school guys on the show here are making references. But do you remember the Arsenio Hall show? It was like things that make you go, that's critical thinking, right? That you hear something and you just don't take it at face value, that you kind of, interrogate it, poke it, a little bit, and understand and try to figure out, like, okay, that's what they said, but where did they come up with that? How did they arrive at that? What's going to be the meaning of this? Like, it's the questions behind the question that I think really points to what critical thinking is.
And I'm reading a book right now that kind of goes along with this, titled Misbelief. And it's about how people get sucked into the two ends of the spectrum of believing the worst about the world, whether you're, think politics, left or right. The two ends tend to believe a lot of things that are not really true. And when they say, I researched this, they've watched 24 Instagram reels on the subject, and now they know everything there is to know about the subject. And I experienced some of that misbelief, that lack of critical thinking, when I decided at one point, I'm like, it might be kind of interesting to be a part of economic development. Well, I wasn't running for the board. I was trying to get an advisory position. I didn't want a board position. I just wanted to advise on small businesses. I'm telling you, people will attack you who have never met you, who know nothing about you. And they're like, I Googled him. He doesn't know anything about economic development. And you go, okay, Jethro, I'm not sure you do either, but... And that's where the things that make you go, I love that on Arsenio Hall, plus the whoop, whoop, whoop. For those of you old enough to remember. But in that scenario, when we let someone else or something else or some kind of hodgepodge of put together videos do our thinking for us, we get sucked down the rabbit hole pretty quickly, and we lose our capacity to evaluate. discernment is a critical skill, and it goes with critical thinking. So I do think that you're right, Mike. Having a definition of that is a good idea. That critical thinking is the ability to look at something, let go of your prior biases, and be open to
Yes.
truth wherever the truth takes you. And I think the reality or the truth about where we are with thinking skills, this is not a new frustration that corporate America has had with the thinking skills of their employees. It's just a different form of let me Google that. As opposed to Googling it, now we're putting it in ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or one of those, and we're going, oh, let me see what that tells me. And as we talked about on a previous show, AI can hallucinate. So we don't know that it's necessarily true. We know that it sounds really good because AI put it together. So now let's switch to the young perspective here. Thinking about critical thinking, when you think about your thinking, that's metacognition. Start with Megan. Tell me a little bit about, from your perspective, how do you maintain critical thinking in a workplace to ensure that you're not just going with whims?
I think that requires a lot of intentionality. And just in general, I don't think that as a society we're using less brain power. I think we're still using our brains actively, but we just have so much information that we're processing all of the time. So we know a little bit about a lot of things. And I think we're starting to see more and more in workplaces that we have less subject matter experts who know a lot about a little bit. So we're not as focused on very specific things. And I think that's part and due to the fact that we have to wear many hats in the workplace. And so we're doing a lot. And, it just requires us to diversify our efforts. And so part of how you can go back to that is really clearly outline your responsibilities in the workplace and become really good at those things. So if you work in marketing, become an expert on, the search engines that people are using, what's popular in trends, how to communicate really and be very specific for your target audience, things like that. So just really find the area that you want to focus on and make that your main priority in everything that you do. And that doesn't mean that you can't do other things on top of that, but you really want to become an expert on something. And so that requires you to ignore some of the other, mess of the workplace as well.
I like that.
Yeah. What's your thoughts, Malia?
I think it's difficult for me to say, like, how do you kind of grow your critical thinking skills and everything, because I'm such a like critical thinker at heart. That's like I can't not do that, right? And I think that's how it is for all four of us. So I'm like trying to step out of myself for a second and really think about what's actually practical. And I think if you feel like you struggle with critical thinking, take a break from ChatGPT. That should
Yeah.
not be your first and foremost. And
Yeah.
maybe
Shouldn't be
maybe
your
you
go-to.
just maybe you go back to Google for a little bit. um I don't know. I think that ChatGPT has to be, I love how or not just ChatGPT, but AI has to be a thought partner. I love how Claude uses that. It has to be a thought partner. That means that there is an equal amount of work that goes into it. There's not one person doing more than the other. That means that you have to think about how to ask good questions, like we've talked about before. And I think critical thinking is a result of curiosity. It is not its own thing. It has to be a result of curiosity. Ask those genuine questions. Think about what you're wanting. Think about what the result you're wanting, and then understand what you need in order to get there.
Well, and how many people are not curious? Like they just are like, yeah, that's good. I think I'm good. Because what I see is, I think what we're doing is we're trying to take people that are missing the bottom rung of the ladder now, the junior developer, or what we might call a writer crisis, where it's so easy for ChatGPT or Gemini or one of those to go, here's what I suggest your reply should be in your email. So they're not even having to really think about what the reply should be. And what I've seen CEOs complaining about in the last 3 months is, man, you can tell I've got this employee or that employee that they haven't written an email since ChatGPT came out. They copy and paste the email. They go, write a professional response to this. And then they wait for the response, copy, paste, send. And now it's integrated inside the email. So they're like on Gemini, when you're kind of using agent mode, it's going in there and it's saying, here's what it says, here's what you should say back. This will keep you on track. But they're not ready for it. They're doing the same thing in job interviews and with resumes. Rewrite my resume to match this job so that I can get an interview. Well, now even the screening is kind of pointless until you get with the person away from technology, to figure out between that and maybe a validated assessment, who are they really? So I think the
Yeah.
bottom rung, the thinking about what was sent and what you respond with is difficult. And I'll tell you a quick story. I was hired to work with the IT director for a large healthcare corporation. I worked at the corporate office. He was in charge of all the IT for all of their hospitals. And the CEO is like, I'm going to fire him. I'm like, why are you going to fire him? Like, I hate his emails. He needs to be fired. And what his emails were, the CEO would say, where are we on this project? And he would write like 6 pages worth of stuff. And there was an answer in there, but they couldn't find the answer and they weren't going to read the 6 pages. So simple things like learning, well, what response do other people need and what format works best for them. I think from a CEO's perspective, you're really busy, always. You're never not in a hurry. So I said, here's what you need to do. I want you to get your response. Response is in 1 sentence, 3 bullet points, further details to follow. And so if you organize it in that way, now you're thinking the way that that CEO needs to receive information. Now imagine a network engineer. They're going to need more information than 1 sentence, 3 bullet points, and more information to follow. They need to know all the details and how things are structured. So as you're changing up your formats, I mean, and I think emailing is the ground where we start learning how to do a lot of our critical thinking. You read it and then you think, if I were that person receiving this information, what would be the most important thing to me right now? So, Megan, I know you've got a lot of experience with customer service with people. And I would imagine, and chime in on this, you change the way you respond to people based on what you know about people.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's really important to do. I mean, you have to pay attention to how they're reacting. So if you're face to face, you look for the nonverbal cues. If they're confused, they're going to make a face and they're not understanding. So that's when you step in and you start explaining it and breaking it down even further. Or if it's by email, if they're asking a lot of questions, then that might be someone that you need to be a little bit proactive with and just go ahead and explain what you're doing and why you're doing it so that you can help them understand. And that's going to build the relationship better with the client or customer. And they're going to seek you out as the expert because you can react based on
Mhm.
their communication style.
Yeah. And I think that's the part of what's been missing. The other part I think of what's been missing is I think the older generation kind of got used to just doing their thing. And they looked at a lot of times the younger generation and they're like, yeah, I'm good. I'm not going to share anything. And I've heard older generation employees, and right now that's Xers and some boomers, because Xers are, unfortunately, my generation are becoming the older generation in the workplace. But they go, I don't want to share. I don't want to take the time. I don't think they listen well. And so they kind of just keep their stuff to themselves. So what we're missing is the knowledge transfer. So I'm kind of curious. Let's start with Malia on this one. How do you think we could transfer knowledge from older generation, maybe into technology, and then where it supports the younger generation?
Totally. I think it stems from curiosity. There is almost no one in this world who doesn't want to talk about themselves. So if you come up and you see someone that you admire and recognize as a leader in your organization and you say, hey, I love what you do. I really believe in it. I want to be more like you. What got you here? That I can't think of a single person that would be like, no, I'm not going to tell you. like everyone wants to share their story, and leading with empathy first. So if you show that you are open with the work that you do, if you show that you do good work, then other people are going to be more willing and more transparent with you first.
That's really interesting. So I like the way that you did the question there of how did you get here, kind of figuring out who they are and what makes them tick. Because I agree with you. I think everybody likes to talk about that. And then you can do follow up questions that let you dig in further. So, Megan, what's your take on
Yeah.
that?
I just want to say to Malia's point, I think how you phrase it is really important because if you just walk up to somebody and say, "Tell me how to do my job," they're going to, not want to deal with that because that's a lot to process and explain. But if you ask for tips and tricks on certain things, that's really helpful. So I think reaching a mutual understanding between the two parties is essential. Saying, like, as the younger generation, I want to learn from you because I value your input and I see that you've done the work in the past, I think can go a long way. And then as the older generations looking down to the younger generations, understanding that they were once in that position as well, and thinking about the mentors that they had and all of the help they had along the way, and just recognizing that they can be that for someone else can go a long way in their own empathy and understanding and willingness to help others because we all need a little bit of help every now and then. And yes, you do want to teach people to be critical thinkers on their own, but that doesn't mean you don't, you can't assist them with that occasionally as well.
Yeah. So, Mike, let's go the other direction then. What would motivate you to put all of your knowledge and expertise into some kind of a technological archive that could help future generations? Like, you're really brilliant, and we want your brain organized so that AI can be AI Mike.
Nothing would motivate me at all. That's too big of a list. I like that you're asking that question, and actually, I'm gonna kind of dovetail Megan and Malia's comments. So what's interesting, and it was an insight that was happening while you guys were both speaking, is that I have asked, mentors or asked people to mentor me. People have asked me to mentor them. What's interesting is the question is, even to Malia's point, what did you do to get here? We think about this, and really the question comes across almost as if there's a formula to it. Hey, tell me how you got that. How many, like Jody, if we were going back in the day, like, hey, you were on Pac-Man for 2 hours. How did you get past level 3? Right? There would be a cheat code on how to do that. There's not a cheat code for mentorship or learning life. And I think really what we're trying to ask is, what did you learn while you had bumps, bruises, scrapes, and cuts along the way? Because we know inherently there's going to be challenges. Whether I'm just starting my career, whether I'm mid in my career, whether I'm senior in my career, we know there's going to be challenges.
Yeah.
And I don't really want to know how you did it. What I want to know and synthesize is, what lessons did you take away when you got set down on your butt, when you fell flat on your face, when this thing that you thought was going to be a grand idea fell and didn't work out the way that you want. What lesson did you learn? Because the second question behind that is going to be, hey, I'm in my career new. Is there a way for me to lean into that kind of a problem? If not, what are those opportunities for me to gain that kind of wisdom across the arc of my career? I think the other thing too, and this happens on both the aging out population and the aging in population in the workforce, is we are so impatient. We if there is any skill that has waned terribly, it's patience. Because the one thing you can't manufacture is time. That person that's been in their career for 30 years has had 30 years to get those learning lessons, right? And none of us, I'll go out on a limb and say none of us were really trying to kind of game the path and learn all those lessons and do that kind of cheat code. A lot of it happened serendipitously. So the for the person coming into their career, thinking that at year 3, year 5, year 7, that they should be where that 30-year, that's just something that you can't do without putting in that level of time. And you just have to earn the patience. And for those that are in that mentoring era, that mentoring phase of their career, be patient with the people coming up behind you. You would have wanted somebody to take the patience that you can now give when you were that early in your career.
And admittedly, I had several mentors, and there's two questions I always like to ask mentors to prepare my own self. Like this is reverse mentoring, where you're asking questions, kind of like what Malia started with. But question number one was, what would you say your three most important lessons have been in this journey? And then what are the five most important skills that you have developed that have helped you
Oh, yeah.
succeed? And the thing that is frustrating is you watch social media, and the most common things you're hearing, like, I asked Claude, help me make $1 million in the next 30 days. What do I need to do? And like everybody's thinking that that's the answer. But I go back to Jim Carrey's philosophical, is that a word?
Philosophical.
Yeah.
Philosophical.
We'll go with philosophical. It's a falafel. It's a nice
Philosophical.
sandwich. It's got.
So juicy, so good. Anyway, so you know this is live because we're not editing that. The philosophical perspective that says, you know, I hope everybody gets everything they ever dream of, the riches, the fame, the glory, so that they can see it won't make them happy either. And I think one of the most important lessons that was shared over and over with me again was fall in love with the journey, not the destination, because you're going to be on the journey a long time. You're going to be at the destination once. And if your entire life is about getting to retirement, you will have missed your entire life. Your entire life has to be about becoming, you know, who are you? What do you want to accomplish? So part of, go back to the curiosity thing. If we can keep people curious and growing, like, I really just want to figure out how to be a better version of me in this role, then they love what they're doing. But if it's like, I need to get out of this role and into the next role as fast as possible, they're never going to discipline themselves to become that better version. So I think, you know, the reverse questioning, or if you're a mentor and you just want to map this out, what are the three most important lessons you have learned on your journey to the level of success you're at right now? And those sometimes are what I wish I knew sooner. And what five skills are the most important skills you've developed? I can guarantee you very few people that are 50 years old and older are going to say the most important skill I learned early on was AI. Mostly because it wasn't there early on in their career, but it still wasn't their most important skill. Their most important skill was probably thinking or resilience or something along those lines. And that's what got them there. Because it's not the hard skills that define us, it's the soft skills, the human skills that define us. And right now, one of the most sought after things in new hires, especially young people, is the ability to communicate effectively. Can you walk into a room, shake hands, say hello, make eye contact, that kind of stuff? So now go
Yeah.
back the other direction. Jump in there, Megan. I think you had something you're going to add.
Yeah, I was going to say, we were talking about storing knowledge for future generations, or sometimes even just for our coworkers and ourselves. Something that I have trained myself to do is, as I'm doing a task, I create a guide for myself of everything that I'm doing. So I take screenshots, I write out what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and what I'm achieving because of that. Because when I entered this position, there wasn't necessarily a training manual for how to do my job. And I think that's the case for a lot of jobs. And usually that's because there hasn't been a need for it, or no one thought to write it down. And so I have done that, and I have kept a binder full of all of the manuals that I have created for myself and what I do. And I honestly go back and reference those a lot because I sometimes forget how to do something. And so it's not necessarily for anybody else because I don't plan on anybody replacing me anytime soon, but it's helpful for me. Or like when I'm out on vacation and I need to ask somebody else to do something for me, I can send them. I have this Google Drive folder and it has all of the manuals and how to do this exact thing if you need any help. So I have just, been doing that consistently, and I think that's been a tremendous help. And if one day in the future I need to pass that on to somebody else, it's already created and I don't have to think about it. And I don't have to go back in and become overwhelmed of trying to write down every single thing I do in this position.
Yeah.
Well, you and Malia both take incredibly good notes, and I hope that is indicative of your entire generation because I know I don't take good notes at all. I fly by the seat of my pants a lot. I intuit a lot.
I
I
was
think
But
think about that for just a second though, Mike. Like the way we grew up as Gen Xers, there was no structure. And you
no,
look at the way that
no.
Malia and Megan grew up, there was a lot of structure. So I do think in a lot of ways their
Is that
generation,
what Jody? Is that what we're using for our excuse?
that's my
Is that
excuse. I don't know what
okay?
this
Okay,
is. It could have been from you were born in Ohio or something.
right, right,
I shoot from the hip because I was born in Texas. I don't know.
right, right.
But I do think growing up without structure changes that. Um, but what I think Megan does and what Malia does, and I hope a lot of your generation does that. I don't know for sure that they do. I hope that they do. But what I think has been missing with this middle children generation of the Gen Xers is because they grew up loosey goosey. I kind of do whatever. Your mom's going to be somewhere besides home when you get off of the bus and make yourself your own milk and cookies, dang it. Uh,
Right.
this next generation, they had structure, and the structure created a desire for structure. Now go back to the amount of structure that the traditionalists gave the boomers. I think they're a lot like boomers because one of the things that boomers always bragged about is, well, I didn't know how to do it, so I went and read the book and I created my own guide. Like, oh my gosh, Gen Z is doing the same thing. They're creating their own guides for everything.
Yeah.
I think we've come
Yep.
full circle on that. And I do think that's good. And I think a lot of Xers get mad if you don't just know how to do it. But if nobody taught you, how would you know?
How would you know? I do want to circle back. Megan said something early on, and in this conversation, and I think going back under this critical thinking component, I want to put a caveat, a warning out there for anyone listening to say, be careful with quote unquote absolute truths. Because the thing with an absolute truth is you stop asking questions about it. If you think it's absolute, you're done querying the thing. And don't just look for the truth, continue to probe for more and more and more and more truths. I know growing up as a Gen Xer, we thought Pluto was a planet. If that had been an absolute truth, we would have stopped asking questions about it. Guess what? Pluto's not a planet. We have to keep asking more and more and more truths about things, keep poking the box because you never know what you're going to unravel. And you'll find more and more depth, greater dimension, richer textures to things as you keep probing and poking the box. So I just want to put that out there is just be very careful about quote unquote absolute truths.
Yeah, for the record, it's a dwarf planet, and it was one of my favorite planets.
Of
it's
course,
always
because it
been
was
my
named after the
favorite.
Disney dog.
Yeah.
It made me sad when they said
I
that.
know. It will always be a planet in my heart.
Yeah. And it was,
Yeah.
I know, don't Pluto. Sorry, I know this is totally off topic, but you're right about the absolute truth. But I was watching Big Bang Theory, and Sheldon was mad at Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's like, "You were a part of the International Astronomical Society that declassified Pluto." I like Pluto.
That's a reason to be upset.
Yeah.
I love it.
Valid
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah.
I love
So,
it.
so I do agree with you. Watch out for the absolute truths because you give up your critical thinking when it becomes an absolute. But I think there's three things that we've been talking about. I want to kind of pull them into the funnel and then kind of get our final thoughts on this. But one thing we've been talking about is you have to teach people as you get them. They got to know the critical skills that you've got to learn, and you've got to teach them from the bottom rung up. Don't use AI for responding to emails and reading your emails until you know how to read and respond to emails. Base level thinking about response patterns and thinking about other people. I think the second thing that we've been talking about is we've been talking about the fact that you have to have mentorship programs. If we don't have mentorship programs, there's a pretty good chance that we're going to be missing out on the context of how to learn and what to learn, and then we'll go all off the rails learning the wrong thing. And then the third thing, we talked about the bounce back a lot. I do think resilience is a characteristic that we look for in young people, and a growth mindset. And growth mindset was Dr. Carol Dweck's model, and it was, I don't know, 20, 25 years ago that she put this out, that you're either a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. A growth mindset can handle failure. And you were talking about that a little bit, Mike, earlier, that it's okay to get knocked on your rear. Just get back up. Learn that it's okay to fail. And I think that's part of what I was saying with, you got to love the journey, not just the destination, because you're okay getting knocked down if you know it's just part of the journey. Every great epic adventure, from the Odyssey to Indiana Jones, anything else, was about the journey. Like if they're like, I took a helicopter and returned the ring in Lord of the Rings, you'd be like, well, that was dumb. If you look at Indiana Jones, nothing happened different for Indiana Jones and his friends with the Ark of the Covenant. Like they could have not done anything and it would have been fine, but it was an amazing movie because of the journey. So I do think you got to fall in love with the journey and not how fast you get to the destination. So let's kind of do a round robin. I want your final thoughts, final piece of advice. We're going to start with Malia. What do you got?
In a world full of AI and machine learning, learn how to embrace your humanness by asking deep questions, make yourself resilient to the workforce, and lead with empathy.
Excellent. All right, Mike, you're up. What do you got?
We started talking about Google and all these tools. Just remember that hammers didn't build houses, brushes didn't paint pictures, and computers didn't solve problems. It was the human on the other end of that. Everything is a tool. So treat it as such. You can't wait for the computer or AI or whatever the next thing is to do things for you. You have to, as Malia just said, you have to embrace your humanness to solve these problems.
All right, Megan, round us out.
I really like that. And I was just going to say it's really easy to turn to technology or other people for things that we don't know or understand. So I challenge you the next time that you're thinking through something, like take the time to actually try to solve it yourself before going to someone else. I mean, teachers growing up said we wouldn't have calculators with us all the time. And now I literally have a calculator on my watch, so I'm never without one. But I really try to make myself solve the math problem on my own before going to my calculator. So just take the time to think through it before you turn to someone or something else.
For the record, those of us that were nerds in the late 1970s, early 1980s,
IMAX. Come on. Or Casio. Casio.
Yeah, Casio.
Yeah. It was Casio had the calculator. That's right.
So, all right, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you kind of figured out how to get your on-ramp going, train people up on the baseline thinking. I hope you figured out that you got to have mentorship programs. You got to keep investing in people and passing on knowledge. And I hope you really understand that the human side, the curious side, that's what's going to keep us going, because as Mike said, paintbrushes do not paint pictures. People paint pictures. So I'm Jody Holland.
Malia.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Megan.
And we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for joining Become the Leader. Keep growing forward and become the leader you would follow.